Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to TCAP training. My name is Azra Syed. I'm a training coordinator for TCAP. Today's training is on food establishment, food safety, design review, and inspection process. Quick reminder, as we do this training every time, uh, and uh, and we are recording this training for future use. So keep your microphone muted and cameras off during the training. We request that you type your questions in the chat box so we can answer all the questions at the end of the training. We encourage the questions, so please type them. And now I will turn it over to Ryan to go over the agenda and introduce the presenter.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ezra. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, this webinar. As always, we like to start hearing from you. We do appreciate your time. So your feedback is very important to us and to our presenters. So take a moment, scan this QR code. I believe I have the, let me see, the link over here. Yes, the link to the form is posted on the chat box. Let us know your comments. Your comments are anonymous, or if you'd like to leave your contact details so we can contact you afterwards if you have any questions, anything you need to be clarified on about the process or about this specific webinar, we will be in touch with you if you leave us your contact. But again, this is anonymous. We always share your feedback with our presenters in order to improve our presentations. Today, let's go into the agenda. Today, great agenda, great topics. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we have food safety and food establishments reviews by Raquel Barnes. Raquel Barnes is currently the supervisor of the Agent Safety Management Food Safety Team. She's been with the Port Authority for 3 years. She'll be talking about the food safety reviews, food safety and TCAPs. We also have the food safety, the construction process by the REOs. Today we have 2 of the REOs from the LaGuardia Airport, Camilo Sinicolo and Daniel Pineda. We also have the inspection process and some special topics regarding the food safety establishments, also by Raquel Barnes today. Like we mentioned, please don't wait until the end. You can type your questions in the chat box so that we can go ahead at the end of the presentation and review them, read them out loud so that our presenters can answer them. And if not, again, we'll leave this form is a great way to contact us. You can type your questions if it's not related to this specific webinar, and we'll be sure to get in touch with you. Without further ado, without too much talking, Raquel, I'm going to leave the floor to you, and we'll see you at the end of the presentation.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this this webinar where we're going to talk about the food safety group here at the Port Authority. We're located in Agency Safety Management, and I just want to introduce myself. As Ryan said, I'm the supervisor of the group. Next slide, please. So in terms of what we do for the review process, I wanted to tell you about us and our roles and responsibility. So we're located in the Chief Health and Safety Office, Agency Safety Management, Safety Assurance, the Food Safety Unit. And the food safety team, we basically execute Agency Safety Management food protection program. And our roles and responsibility include the tenant alteration application design reviews, the TAAs. We also do minor work application reviews. We do the final constructions of any newly constructed, newly renovated or remodeled food service establishments. We do the routine sanitary inspections once the space becomes operational, and we do any special investigation associated with the food service establishments. Next slide, please. So we are responsible for all food service establishment that operates on Port Authority property, and we evaluate them to make sure that they're in compliance with applicable laws, federal, state, or local health codes. Our team consists of the safety assurance manager. His name is Ryan Muniz. I'm the supervisor of the group, and I do have 4 senior occupational health specialists in my team that help me with the program. Kimberly, Alfred, Jacqueline, Jose, and Hares. Next slide, please. So before we go into the review process, I wanted to talk about some very important definition that will be used in this presentation, and they're intended to assist with understanding the role that we play in the design review. So one of the first one is what food is, because sometimes people will get confused as to that definition. So food means any raw, cooked, or processed edible substance, beverage, ingredients, chewing gum, ice, or water used or intended for use or for sale in whole or part for human consumption. So basically, if it's intended for human consumption, the code kind of define what food means. It defined food service establishment or retail food service establishment as meaning any operation that stores, prepares, packages, serves, vends foods directly to the consumer or otherwise provide food for human consumption. So that's the definition of a food establishment. And a food service establishment means a place where food is provided for individual portion that is served directly to the consumer, whether such food is provided for free of charge or sold, or whether the consumption occurs on or off the premise. Temporary food is something that I wanted to also describe. It means a food service establishment that operates for a period of no more than 14 consecutive days, or is a recurrent event that operates for a period not exceeding 3 days per week, but it occurs in conjunction with a single event or celebration. So those are some important definitions that I feel is very critical if you're going to do like a food service establishment design, to kind of bear those in mind so that it will help guide your design process. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about the review process and how is it that we do our food safety design review. Next slide. So basically, one of the things that I would like to bring up is that our food safety review, it provides standardized input to guide the construction process. So the way it works is that there is the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. They have published what is called a food service establishment plan review guidelines. They have done the research to kind of say, you know, this is how the food service establishment should be designed across all 50 states and local health codes. So they did the research and they have published these guidelines, and those are the guidelines that we follow when we do our design review here at the Port Authority. So it provides guidelines to assist regulatory agencies and industrial professionals in achieving uniformity across the process. So when we do our review, we make sure that we based on where the establishment is located and the jurisdiction it falls under, if it's the FDA, such as like our flight kitchens, or if it's in New York State, we use all these applicable codes to just make sure that the space is compliant with whatever jurisdiction that it will fall under. But despite the many health codes that we use, all major constructions requirement for food service establishment are very similar across the jurisdiction. Next slide, please. Why do we do these design reviews, right? So the main purpose, the main objective of them is to ensure compliance with applicable health code to assist in the construction of these food service establishments that are going to be constructed here on Port Authority property. And the function of our design review and our construction inspection is to provide you with a comprehensive overview of proposed food service operation, with an emphasis on equipment specification, architectural design, the operational procedure, what is the menu you plan to serve, how is food prepared, and how does the food flow through the establishment. The end goal being to prevent foodborne illness resulting from poorly designed spaces or floor plan. So that is one of the things that we try to make sure that when we look at these food service establishments, we're trying to make sure that the public is protected and it's designed to prevent foodborne illnesses. Next slide. How do we do our design process, right? So the design process, it provides opportunity to complete an effective evaluation of the food service establishments, and it try to ensure the following. It ensures that minimal standards are met for the sanitary design, layout, facility layout, operational, and how the product flows, the menu, the construction, and just regular maintenance of the space, right, and the surrounding. We try to make sure that during this design review, that the minimum standards are met for the protection of environmental health and the safety of the public. We try to make sure that we look at, ways that there's prevention of environmental health associated with illness, and we try to promote public health. And the health code violations are eliminated prior to construction and implementation. And this is key because if we try to design the space that we don't end up with violations while the space is operating, then I think that we are very successful in what we do. Conditions are corrected and prevented that may adversely affect somebody who's utilizing the space. And we provide technical assistance to just make sure that it is done in an organized and efficient way, and that operation will be conducted in an organized and efficient way. And of course, we try to make sure that it meets customer expectation for a safe operation of a permitted food establishment. Next slide. What is the value that we provide to you? So we provide standardized health code interpretation that are impartial and are acceptable by all jurisdictions. As I said earlier, because there's a FDA guideline for all 50 states on how food service plan reviews should take place, we're providing those interpretation and that impartial review. It helps with cost, right? So it minimizes post-construction modification to PA buildings and structures if we do the design review. We ensure that it's code compliance, that the tenants are not cited or fined during operation by the applicable jurisdiction for construction-related design comments, right? We make sure that we provide technical assistance, ensure that the tenants who occupy the space, that they can get the space done quickly, because a lot of the jurisdiction, they do have like a 30-day or they have longer time for their reviews. So when we do the reviews here at the Port Authority, we're able to get you to the finish line as quickly as possible without waiting on the jurisdiction to come in to do their final inspection or their inspection so that you can open. Next slide. So the next thing we're going to talk about is, how we play into the TCAP design process. So when it comes to design submission, what type of submission will trigger a review from my team? Any food-related construction, including but not limited to the ones that are listed here, will trigger a design review from my team. So if you're going to design a bar, if it's going to be a lounge or a supermarket, a flight kitchen, a mobile food vending units, if you're going to do a retail food service establishment, a commissary, a shared kitchen, an employee cafeteria or a pantry area, if you're going to do a vending machine that holds food that needs temperature control, or a vending machine that makes the food or beverage inside of the machine, those will trigger a design review from us. It depends on if it's going to be a manual work or a TA, but they will send those review over to us, and we'll have to look at it and make the relevant comment and recommendation. So the documents that we require to do our reviews, right? We need the entire package. So of course, now we have eBuilder, which is a very good way of putting everything together and sharing with the different stakeholders. So everything that you put into eBuilder is shared with us, and we go through these documents and just make sure that we get, the demolition plans, and we get like the architectural drawings, we get the electrical drawings, we look at the photometrics, we look at our kitchen drawings. Those are things that we go through to just make sure the entire space is being designed accordingly. And of course, we do need a physical material sample board as part of our design process. Next slide. So while we're doing our reviews, one of the things that we try to do is that we look at the entire scope of the project. What is the intended use of the space? What are you trying to target as a clientele? What does your beverage or food and beverage menu look like? Where are your support space, your locker areas, the lounge spaces, your janitorial closet? Where are the restrooms for the employees and the customers? We look at the entire design project package. We look at the notes that are made. We look at our health notes. We look at the floor plans. We look at the finishes. We look at equipment schedule, plumbing schedule, location of the equipment on the elevation drawings, the catalog cut sheets. We look at how is it that when you're doing the electrical, the mechanical, and ventilation system, how is all of that affecting the equipment that are there? Are there indirect drains or anything like that? We're looking at those drawings. We also look at our kitchen or food service drawings, just make sure that the elevations are there, the finishes are good. How are you placing the equipment in the space? Is there a hand wash sink where it's required? Are you putting like a refrigerator next to like a hot equipment? Those are all of the things that we do. We make sure that the way the space is designed, it's going to work operational when doing operation, to make sure that you don't get violations from the city when they come to do their inspection. Are there sneeze guards where they should be? And so we continue to do the reviews until you get no further comment. And then we issue a memo to the tenant coordinator, who then indicate to you that it is good, you're good to go, and final construction inspection will be required prior to the space being open. Next slide. So we have done a couple reviews. We've been doing this for a while. So I did run a report, and I discovered that these are some of the things that prevent us from issuing no further comment, right? When we do our reviews. Sometimes reviews that we get, and that quality has gotten so much better over the years, but sometimes we do get some deficient submission. And when I say deficient, it means that it doesn't have the information that we need to kind of give you your NFC. So it might need a little bit more. It might need to have some revisions in order for us to satisfy the things that we're looking for. Or sometimes the contractor, the architect, is not familiar with the health code requirements. They may have worked in a different jurisdiction or a different state or something like that, that the code is kind of different in the jurisdiction that they're trying to occupy the space in, and they're not familiar with it. And sometimes they just don't want to comply with the health code, right? And so their comments will just not be sufficient. Their response will not be sufficient to the comment that we are trying to close out. Or there's writer response that are promised for the future. They'll say to us, "Oh, we'll give you the next time around," or somebody else is going to give it to you. And until we get the response or a comment, then we can't close it out and issue the NFC that is required to close the design out. Sometimes scope change happen mid-submission, and so that will cause us to have to go back into the entire package to just make sure that all the requirements that we need are there. Or sometimes the material that are designated are not on all the elevation. We don't know what is going to be in a certain room. Those are things that we notice. There's no we don't get the menus, our health notes are missing, the photometric plan is not there, catalog cut sheets are not there, or they're not labeled to kind of match the equipment schedule, because sometimes we'll get different people to do different parts, but they're not speaking to each other. And so they're not, when we do the reviews, they don't match up. We don't get the material board on time, although I can honestly say that has improved significantly. We've been getting those along with the first submission for most of the drawings that we've gotten lately. Drawing elevations are missing, so we'll look into a drawing and there will be a space, but elevation markers are missing, so we can't see the entire space because we will only see like the back and the front, but the left and the right side are missing. So just make sure that you're giving all the elevation markers for the space, and you're showing us all the equipment and how they're laid out in the space. Or there's a drawing that is a reference drawing, right? We're being sent to a drawing that is not in the package. And so we're not able to look at that drawing to close out the comments. We'll get spec sheets that doesn't indicate that is NSF or equivalent. So we can close that out, or the sneeze guards are not provided, or when we do get sneeze guard, they don't comply with, with the relevant standard. Ceilings are not provided where they're required, or if we're getting the base in certain spaces that are not code compliant, we'll get like rubber bases in food service spaces that is not allowed, or we won't get the cove base that were required in our food spaces. Next slides, please. So I'm going to turn it over to the resident engineer's office to kind of talk about what it is that they see on our food safety construction and the food safety process, to just let them speak to you about their role in the process and their observation. So Carmela and team.
Thank you, Raquel. So my name is Carmela Sinicolo. I am the resident engineer here at the LaGuardia Resident Engineers Field Office. As many of you know, the Resident Engineer's Office is located at the various PA facilities. So we all work under the same umbrella. If we could go to, we're here, thank you very much. So for those of you who have participated in prior training webinars, you'll see our presentation may look familiar to you. I just want to let you know that we have standardized these presentation slides to outline the roles and responsibilities of each of the stakeholders. We've also updated these slides to incorporate the new material, the new disciplines, the new element of work, so that we are all on the same page throughout the construction and the TAA process through the 3 stages of, to close out. I'm going to pass this over to Dan from my office. He will go through the construction process, and of course, inclusive of the typical deficiencies. I know Raquel has really been very thorough in outlining the expectations in the design phase, as well as when the tenant is looking for, occupancy and stocking their shelves. It is very critical that we take note of what she has outlined, as well as the resident engineer's office. We also participate in understanding that and seeing it before we call her in. So we hope that we could, identify it earlier on, so that when Raquel or her team come on board, it's a quick and easy inspection. So I will pass over to Dan.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan with the Resident Engineer's Office. I'm going to go over what our role is in the TCAP process as the Resident Engineer's Office, go over the items that we look for and our expectations and some of the items that we find. So starting with who we are, our primary roles and responsibilities. We remain as the primary Port Authority point of contact all the way from pre-construction to closeout. So we are the main line of communication coordinating between the tenant team and the Port Authority facility and the various groups as required for coordinating any construction activities, inspections, and all the way out through closeout. We guide the tenant team to successful project closeout, answering any questions that might come up along the way and keeping them informed of any changes to the TCAP process. Our responsibilities: we audit and monitor both the tenant's contractor and their design professional to make sure that they're performing everything in accordance with the PA-approved contract documents, specs, permits, and all approved submittals, making sure that they're adhering to the TCAP procedures. And we want to do all this prior to bringing out any Port Authority groups, as Carmela mentioned, so that when we call for an inspection, there should be no comments. So we're keeping the tenant team informed along the way. As we audit and monitor the work, we inform the tenant team of our findings. We attend and coordinate with the various PA units, which can include OSD for food safety. It can also include other PA facility groups such as security coordinators, and this is all to coordinate and and attend construction inspections and witness any active testings that's required by the contractor. And the REO field verifies all the work being requested by the AUR prior to scheduling an inspection. At the end of all inspections, we issue meeting minutes. Next slide, please. Moving on to design, I just want to emphasize the importance of the tenant and the AUR conducting a site visit prior to contract document submission. This is critical to identify any existing conditions above, below, within, or around the site that could become an obstruction or could delay the construction if something comes up that could result in a field change. So we want to identify this during the design phase. During the design phase, the REO will review contract drawings both for constructability and to get an understanding of the scope of work. So we'll review the phasing plans, logistic plans, and staging areas. We want to understand the scope of work, whether that's what kind of food establishments are included in the TAA, whether that's a pantry, kitchen, locker room, which is going to dictate the inspections and tests that are required prior to closeout. We'll look to see that the drawings include details for anything that's called out, whether that's new or modifications to existing. We want to understand the material size, the support type, the type of material, whether that's vinyl or stainless steel. We want to understand the testing and acceptance requirements.
And we'd also like to emphasize that TCAP is very clear that there's no PVC piping permitted on any of the installations. So I just want to throw that out there.
Right, and coordination between disciplines. So if you have on the food and in the food safety drawings, you want to make sure that any proposed equipment does not become an obstruction to the path of egress, does not reduce any required ADA clearances, or become a sprinkler obstruction. So all the various disciplines should coordinate to not become an obstruction later on during construction that we only find out when we're doing an inspection. So these are all things that should be coordinated in advance. And all required special inspections should be listed on the drawings. REO monitors all design comments to make sure that they're implemented in the field. And we recommend that the AUR design the project by identifying in the drawings via a phasing plan if there's any phased occupancy that's envisioned or proposed by the tenant. And the goal during the design phase is to reach an NFC design determination prior to the pre-construction meeting. Next slide, please. A pre-con can be scheduled. Next slide, please. A pre-con can be scheduled at the earliest once a conditional approval has been received, but of course, full design approval is the goal. And a pre-con can be scheduled once we have conditional approval and all the pre-con documents are submitted to eBuilder and approved. So now we're using eBuilder to upload and perform the reviews for all the submittals. At the pre-construction meeting, we're going to go over if there's any open design comments and what the path to NFC would be. We're going to go over all the pre-con documents, which will include the MWBE plan, the contractor's certificate of insurance, any applicable security plans. We'll review the general contractor's detailed schedule, which should include the mobilization date. It should include any required inspections, and it should specify whether that's a third-party special inspection, an AUR inspection, any pre-tester inspections that have to be performed prior to calling for official inspection. And there should be enough buffer time to address any comments that may come up. For example, after the final inspection, there should be a time to address those comments and allow us to put in the official permit request. So there should be enough time for that prior to occupancy. And any milestones should also be identified. Any phasing plans, if there's any excavation, we'll go over 811 call before you dig and any OSHA-related safety requirements. Of course, required special inspections. I want to emphasize that the special inspection reports should be uploaded into eBuilder as they are performed. So not waiting until we're ready to call for an inspection that we're going to upload all the special inspection reports with the certification package. The REO wants to see each report uploaded as they're performed so that we can begin reviewing them in a timely manner. And at the pre-construction meeting, we put an emphasis on the AUR's responsibility. As this is a TCAP, the AUR is 100% responsible for the work and inspections. So at the pre-con, we asked that the architect or engineer of record review the scope of work, go over their inspection strategy to ensure that all the special inspections are performed as required, and any critical elements of work. Inspection process meeting. For more complex projects, the tenant can schedule this, can request this meeting, and the REO will coordinate to go over the expectations of any required tests or inspections.
And we'll also bring in any key stakeholder that would be affected by some of the comments. So we want to include, so if this is a health and safety inspection and there were some deviations from the drawings, instead of waiting for the last minute when we're ready for occupancy, we would put this inspection process meeting together, invite the necessary people, have a dialogue to understand what needs to be resubmitted as a scope change to ensure that we clear the path for a successful occupancy.
Moving on to construction, it is the AUR's responsibility to ensure that all elements of work are complete and in conformance with the approved drawings. The REO just audits and monitors the fieldwork, making sure that all third-party inspections, attending third-party inspections is required, and we expect the contractor to provide the REO with advance notice of any special inspections or third-party tests. Next slide, please. We're going to go over some typical deficiencies that REO finds in the field that we look for prior to bringing out OSD. We want to make sure that all these typical deficiencies are resolved. First and foremost, all the work should be installed as per the approved drawing. So any deviations is going to be a deficiency in the field. So if, for example, if the contractor is missing equipment, that should be installed per the drawings. If the general contractor should pay special attention to the details of the cove base, the flooring installation details, and any wall installation details, making sure that the proper material is installed. Any equipment that should be movable should have casters as required. The general contractor should provide the potable water test results and provide it to the REO. The temperature should fall within the proper appropriate range. So the hot water has to be within a certain range. The refrigeration temperature, same thing, should be in the permissible range. And there's a checklist for OSD deficiencies that the REO will provide during the pre-construction meeting for the tenant's benefit that they can follow as a guideline prior to calling for an inspection. We want to make sure that there's no leaks in any plumbing lines or condensate lines, which should be insulated. Walk-in cooler light levels are non-compliant. That's a big one. So walking the entire space to ensure that the proper light levels are provided. Proper seal is not achieved at the door and opening. So any openings should be sealed properly. This includes penetrations in any ceilings or walls. Any equipment protruding into the egress path. The Ansel system testing is required with the fire alarm. The exhaust hood is not at the proper height. 3-compartment sink needs to drain properly. There should be no splashing outside of the designated drain. And the lighting within the food service the glass within the food service shall be shatterproof or completely covered.
That's right. So, yeah, light fixture.
Yeah, so any lighting above the food should be shatterproof or covered. Next slide, please. So another example is if the drawing shows an electrical panel to be recessed, but the contractor mounts it on the surface. This could become an obstruction and interfere with egress path. If the egress door is not at the proper width, providing the proper clearance, paying special attention to the drawing notes. So looking at the floor drains and sinks should be at the proper location, located within the footprint of a cabinet to be boxed out with a surrounding cove base for accessibility and cleaning. If the installation is not conforming to the approved drawings, everything should be easily accessible and 100% visible. Any utility service lines and pipes should be elevated a minimum of 6 inches off of the floor to avoid any obstructions and prevent cleaning once the space is operational. Install all hand washing signs at the hand wash sinks and any prep areas, installing all the proper door hardware, which includes the sweeps, installing any mop racks at a minimum of 60 inches above the rim of the mop sink and cove base as required. The required lighting levels should be met, and the equipment was not energized to achieve the temperature for the inspection. So this includes all refrigeration areas. Next slide, please. We're going to go over the required documents at a final inspection. So the tenant should be able to provide a copy of the DOH permit or at least the application receipt, provide a copy of the food facility registration issued by the FDA, include a copy of the application for retail food, either the license or registration issued by the Department of Agriculture and Markets, provide a copy of the food protection certificate, licensed pest control, all of the contracts, so pest control contract, waste management, the hood cleaning, we mentioned the water potability test results, and if there's going to be liquor, you need to have a liquor license. And the stocking of shelves is not permitted until we have a successful OSD inspection. Next slide, please. Moving on to field conditions and scope changes. The AUR should be able to avoid any field conditions or scope changes by capturing any obstructions or anything that can become an issue during construction via the design phase AUR site visit. However, if something comes up, the AUR must notify the REO immediately, and the resident engineer will make the determination the best path to capture those conditions, whether that's through an official scope change or an as-built. Typically for fire, life safety, or code-related issues, the AOR will submit an official scope change for official design, QAD design standards review. For minor field conditions, the revisions can be reflected on the as-built drawings, again, with the resident engineer's concurrence. Next slide, please. We go into inspections. Official Port Authority inspections are scheduled by the resident engineer's office through receipt of signed and sealed AUR certification request packages, which will be reviewed and approved by the REO prior to scheduling an inspection. We will not schedule any inspections on any scopes of work with open design comments or any installations deviating from the latest PA approved drawings. We require that an AUR or representative who is knowledgeable of the scope of work is present at the inspection, and the contractor personnel must be present and be able to provide access to the area, and this includes being able to demonstrate any systems or tests that need to be inspected. At the conclusion of each inspections, the REO will issue inspection meeting minutes, noting any deficiencies. Next slide, please. The AUR certification package consists of a cover letter to request a partial or a final inspection, a PH 212 form for a partial or a 314 for a final, a sketch showing the area being certified. This is for a partial inspection and if it's applicable. So we ask that includes the TA number and title, a date, legend identifying the area being certified, and a professional seal and signature. The special inspections checklist, which should be populated with all the dates and cumulative from the start of the project, and any applicable special inspection reports or test results to include NFPA forms. Record drawings are required for a final, and as-built review will be reviewed with the REO prior to record drawing submission. Next slide, please. I'm going to go into the difference between a partial and a final inspection. A final inspection is used when all work on the entire TA is complete, while a partial inspection is used when a portion of the TA is complete for a specific area. And a partial can be either for occupancy or not for occupancy. Not for occupancy is used prior to closing an area, hardening a ceiling or a wall that must be inspected, while a partial inspection for occupancy is used when the tenant is requesting beneficial use. And we want to make sure that the AUR is on site and has any applicable documents ready to present it should a question arise during an inspection, and this will help to reduce any inspection comments. Next slide. We're just going to close the REO portion of this presentation with some key takeaways and tips for success. I want to reemphasize the importance of striving for full design approval prior to the pre-con to avoid any delays in scheduling inspections. Recommend performing on-site walkthroughs as often as possible and as the design is under review. Communication is the key to success, keeping the REO informed of all changes, and the AEOR and contractor to coordinate with the REO in advance for any inspections or tests.
And I'd like to re-emphasize the importance of the engineer of record to be present throughout the process, whether it's the engineer themselves or someone from their office should be on the job site, monitoring all the general contractors' installation, starting from in-wall inspections right through to, the equipment installation and testing. Again, when a tenant needs to go live and take occupancy is not the time where we're resolving issues and trying to find a path. That is not what we're projecting here. We're trying to emphasize and give you advanced information that would lead to success throughout the TCAP process, bringing challenges that may arise in the field to the RE's attention sooner rather than later. We could bring those key stakeholders to the table and help expedite with solutions. It is the key to success. So again, just re-emphasizing how important it is for the engineer of record to be on site as often as they see fit to ensure that we could get that successful inspection. So please continue.
Yes, so the last two items, planning ahead, the contractor to provide 2-week look-aheads, to provide advance notice for any upcoming milestones, tests, or inspections, and any inspection comments that are generated should be addressed in a timely manner. We recommend a maximum 2-week timeline to abate all items, and the EOR to confirm and issue an official re-inspection request. That's all we got. So we'll pass it back to Ryan to continue the remainder of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we enter the final part for this food safety inspection process with Raquel.
So yes, we're going to go over what we look at specifically when we do our inspection with the REO and the tenants team. And some of the things that you're going to hear are going to be very similar, but we just want to make sure that we're emphasizing it and kind of giving you enough information so you can be successful. Next slide, please. So for us, when it comes to the inspection process, because we do cover all, my group covers all PA facilities, we kind of bring that with us when we are doing our inspections. We do conduct, as part of the TCAP construction inspection process for food service establishments, we will facilitate preliminary inspections. We do attend all construction inspections that we're invited to, and we do any final construction inspection follow-up that is required to close a project out. So when we are asked to do preliminary walkthrough, and those are facilitated by having a communication with REO to just make sure we're on the same page and we can accommodate them, we ask that the REO and your team kind of coordinate to make sure that they're done in a timely manner, so that we can explain or we can kind of provide the guidance that is required to be successful, if anything. Preliminary inspections can be requested or can be accommodated based on the project scope. We do ask for it to be meaningful to everybody involved, that at least 80% of the work has been completed. Major construction finishes are in, plumbing connections are made, equipment are in their spaces, because that way we'll be better able to guide you through the process if that is what the space look like. If it's a space that is, say, 50% complete, we won't be able to provide you with meaningful input for it to kind of affect your final construction inspection. And if those are going to happen, we ask that they be done at least a week in advance in REO, and we work together to just make sure that that is done. And we want to emphasize that a preliminary walkthrough is not a final inspection. And so because construction is taking place. So if we do a preliminary and there are comments that are generated that REO will share with you, it does not, if you close those out, it doesn't mean that you don't go to final, because it just means that you're making your chances are you're making your final construction inspection successful, because there will not be things, because remember, construction was taking place. So it would be very difficult for that to be considered a final inspection. Next slide, please. So during the final construction inspection, what is it that we asked for? And I think REO did emphasize some of these things that we asked for, but I just want to be very more specific. We make sure that equipment are in place as according to the drawings, right? So the drawings kind of give us a layout of what the space would be, and we want all equipment to be in their space, installed and working. They should be turned on, the lights should be on, plumbing should be on, the ventilation hood should be able to work. The area is broom clean and free of tools and construction debris. And all the documents that were highlighted earlier by Ario, we want them to be on site. You know, the application for the health application, liquor license, who has the food protection, grease traps, all of those things needs to be available to us, and the pest control contract needs to be available. And one of the reasons why this is very important is that if you are successful in passing our inspection and passing all the other inspections that you need to pass, and Ario, once you get occupancy, you can basically start serving food. So once Ario gives you the okay, you're good to go in terms of, you know, starting your operations. So if you have all these items in place, you'll be able to make sure that you meet all the requirements based on the jurisdiction that you fall under. Next slide, please. So when we go to these inspections, I did use our database to kind of run what it is the things that we saw, what are the common things that we cited or saw during our inspections. And these are the things that we saw came up. Sometimes, like, a lot of the drawings will say we're getting the corner guards, but they're not installed, or some equipment are missing. The cove base is installed, but it's top set, or it's only installed partially, or it's not installed at all. We did ask for backflow prevention devices on certain equipment. We're not seeing them now during this inspection. Drains are direct when they should be indirect. The mop rack is not installed where it should be or as per code. There's a lot of vertical and horizontal penetration. So, you know, when we say seal and chalk, we mean seal and chalk all those spaces. And for us, we're looking at, you know, how is it that we're ensuring that once it becomes operation, we won't be creating spaces or harborage condition for vermin and other pests. So that's why we want all the penetrations to be sealed. We were told during design that equipment will be sealed to the floor or the counter, but they're not. Casters or legs are missing as required. Sometimes we find that the floor drains, we can't find the floor drains because they were built into the cabinets, and so, or the millwork, and so now they're not accessible for cleaning. Or if they do give us access, they're not coved out and ready for cleaning. The plumbing lines or utility lines are on the floor. Refrigeration units, they're not operational. I've gone to final construction inspection. When you open the refrigeration unit, it has the packing equipment still in there. We need to make sure that those units are working, because as I said, once we give you the go-ahead and Ario gives you the go-ahead for all the other inspections that you have to do, you can start operating. So we need to ensure that you'll be able to operate the unit safely. The dishwasher is not working, there's no water, or the water is not at the required temperature. Sometimes the grease trap are not sealed like they sealed around and accessible cleaning like they should. Pipes are not insulated. The lockers are not code compliance, or we're missing documents that were required for this type of inspection. Next slide, please. So we recommend that if you want to be successful, I mean, Ario did point out a lot of the things that they find will help you through your process, but just make sure that you have the required documents, you have a representative on site, you know, to help you if there's anything that we see that you can correct them immediately. And of course, use our checklist to conduct your own inspection. And if you realize that you're not ready, or you feel that something is not available, you reach out to Ario to make sure that you're, you know, say, okay, maybe we should reschedule this one so that we can have a successful inspection instead of conducting numerous follow-up inspections. Next slide. So the last thing that I'm going to go through for this presentation is what I call some special topics. And the reason why I bring these items up is because I want to make sure that I provide you with as much resources to help you be successful. And some of them are very specific to certain projects, but it's very useful information to help guide you through this process. Next slide. So there's a topic I call COVID 101. It's just to kind of let you understand where you will need COVID and how is COVID installed to prevent it from being like topset. So according to the Food Service Establishment Design Review Process and what is put out by the FDA, these are all the places that you need COVID. And COVID is a material that is found at the base of the walls, so the floor at that junction, and is required in most areas of food service establishments. So you need it in any food preparation, store and handling or packaging area, utensilware washing areas. If you have like a garbage or storage area or any disposal area, you need it in that area. And the purpose of COVID is to kind of create a uniform connection between the wall and the floor so that water, debris don't accumulate in that space, so that you'll have, vermin activity, fruit flies, that sort of thing. So the FDA have found out that if you do the COVID properly, that will help prevent those things. So you need it in hand washing area, restrooms, janitorial facilities, around the mop sink, in walk-in freezers. So it's supposed to be inside and outside of it. If there is a bar, the employee side, so anywhere where the employees are going to be making the drinks, that side needs it. It does not need it in the customer or patron side. You should have a base, but it doesn't have to be a Coke base. If there's a customer self-service area where you're serving food that are not prepackaged or, that type of area, you will need it. If you have an employee change area or employee storage area, you'll need cove, wait station, and the COVID must extend up the floor and be integral with the wall, and it should not be top set. Next slide. I wanted to talk about two special jurisdiction requirements, and one of them is the New Jersey Elizabeth Health Department and how it relates to new Port Authority retail food establishments. So in Newark, Terminal A, it falls under the jurisdiction of the New Jersey Elizabeth Health Department. And they have special requirements. And I just wanted to bring it up. So they require that you submit plans to them for their review. And I mean, it's the same plan you're submitting to us. So those plans should be easier to go through their revision process, but they require that you submit a plan. They need you to submit a plan to them for any space that is being constructed or being converted into like a retail food service establishment. That's and this is inside of the health code, but they enforce this. They require that you get a pre-operational inspection and you schedule it with them as well. So why I'm adding this is because after you have successfully passed the Port Authority inspection, you need to reach out to them to make sure. A lot of times we work with them and coordinate it. So once you pass ours, we'll coordinate with them and they will come, we'll do the joint inspection with them to just make sure, and you'll get the inspection after you've passed our inspection. So it's very likely that you'll definitely pass theirs. Once they finish their pre-permit inspection, they issue what is called a temporary license that's valid for 30 days. After that, they'll come back and do their regular routine inspection. But I just wanted to add this because this is something that is very specific to Terminal A or any food service establishment that is on Port Authority property that falls under the jurisdiction of the Elizabeth Health Department. Next slide, please. The other thing I wanted to talk about is New York City Department of Health and how the interaction between Port Authority food establishment, how does that work? So the New York City Health Department do not require the new construction to call them to schedule an inspection. You can actually open to the public 22 days after you have submitted a permit application. So basically, once you get through our inspection here at the Port Authority, if there's more than 22 days since you have applied for their permit, you can open to the public. However, the DOH will conduct an unannounced pre-permit operation inspection to check to make sure that you're complying with code. And they will mark you for any violations of the health code that you see. It's very unlikely that you'll get violation associated with construction or structural things. If there's anything, sometimes it'll just be operational things, like the foods were found out of temperature versus not having adequate refrigeration, because we make sure during the design process that those things are taken care of. And then once you successfully pass their inspection, you get a permit that's valid for 1 year, so you have to renew it every year. You also will get a letter grade if you score less than 13 points, because they use a point system. Once you get that pre-permit operational inspection and you get your permit and you get an A, the city will not come back to visit you for a year, 11 months to a year, unless there's a complaint. However, if you did not successfully pass the inspection, which means that you got more than 13 points, you will get a reinspection. And that reinspection will send you into like a frequency, like if you get an A, they come back within like 9 months. If you get a B, and like that will kind of trigger their regular system for letter grading. You do have the option, after you have successfully passed our Port Authority inspection process and have received occupancy, you can reach out to the city, not open to the public, and schedule what is called a pre-inspection, non-operational inspection. That means that there's no food in the space, you have nothing in there, and you can call and they will come and do that inspection. However, if you do schedule that inspection and you weren't successful, you can't open until they give you the okay to open, regardless of when you did the filing. So that is one of the things that I wanted to bring up with the specialized processes. Sometimes people will ask questions, and I wanted to make sure that you have that information. Next slide. I think it's our recommendation for success. What is it that we think you should do if you want to make sure that you have a successful design review and inspection, if your intention is to build a food service establishment? Try to become familiar with the health code of the jurisdiction that you're trying to build the space under. Learn across projects. One of the things that I find when we're doing designs is that we'll have like the same architect or the same contractor, and they are not learning across projects. And I mean, even if it's in Jersey, the health code might be slightly different, but if you needed a code in Jersey, you'll need a code. You need a code in New York City. So just make sure you're learning across projects. That is something that is very important. It will help you be successful. When you're responding to our design comments, make sure that the comments are actually addressing what it is that we're asking you to. Be very specific that you're trying to close the comment out as well. If we ask for something to happen and the response is like, will comply, that will not close the comment out. You have to say, what exactly is that you're doing, or if you did something, you have to tell us on which drawing you made those changes. One of the things I think is helpful as part of your submission is to just give us an operational plan of the space, especially if you're building spaces that are related to each other. So sometimes we'll get a TA that will have like 5 different types of business in terms of food operations in the space. If you tell us how you plan to operate the space, if it's going to be one permit or separate permits, then it helps us to kind of guide your design. And so when it comes to the jurisdictional inspection, you'll be fine. However, if sometimes we're told that it's going to be one permit, but then later it changes, and then when the jurisdiction comes, it becomes an issue. That's not in nobody's best interest. So just from the beginning, try to explain to us what your intention so we can guide you accordingly, making sure the hand wash sinks are where they should be, the 3 compartment sinks are where they should be. That is very important. Use our checklist, right? We do have a checklist that's available for you to use to guide, to ensure that you're building the space, design the space according to code. And if you need clarification on any of our comments, please reach out to your tenant coordinator if it's the design, or reach out to REO's office if it's related to construction. And they will always, reach up to us, and we will kind of either have a conference call or virtual code revision session, or any kind of informal review sessions to kind of help you with what you're trying to do. We try to make sure that our goal is to get to NFC as soon as possible during design, and to have a final construction inspection that is no further comments or no code is violations that are outstanding or issues. So our goal is to kind of get you into the space as soon as possible. So if you design the space and respond to our comments accordingly, learn across projects, I think that will help you to get to where you need to go as soon as possible. I think that is it for me. Thank you, everyone.